Honourable Member Eugenie Sage. Tēnā koe, Ms Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Thank you. Pleased to take a call on the Local Government Act 2002 Amendment Bill number 3. And Mr Speaker, the local government has got a critical role in ensuring a democratic society, and the Green Party supports democratic processes and democratic governance arrangements, obviously. We support public ownership, public control of assets and services. We want fair and efficient decision-making and service delivery, and we want sound asset management. And, Mr Speaker, this bill imperils quite a few of those principles, because citizens' right to elect local representatives to make decisions about local matters is a fundamental part of our democracy. It's a way of constraining the power of the executive. But this bill, like so much of National's meddling with the local government legislation, and this is the third amendment bill, shows a contempt for that right. It's an attack on local government, and it's an attack on local democracy. And it's another reason why we need a new government. Because in the bill, we're seeing the government increase the power of ministers, increase the power of central government to override the decisions of councils or to constrain them. And we strongly oppose the policy basis for this bill, which is why we're voting against it. Because it undermines local democracy, because it deprives councils of significant and important revenue from development contributions, and because it will compromise councils' ability to provide facilities and infrastructure for their communities. And it's absolute nonsense for government members to claim that it improves the law around development contributions. It does the opposite. And Local Government New Zealand said the provisions around development contributions were some of the provisions that were of most concern to councils across New Zealand. Because, Mr Speaker, the Green Party believes that councils are in the best position to determine the link between population growth and what sort of facilities should be provided to meet the needs of the growing population, whether they were swimming pools, libraries, art galleries or museums. And yet this bill cuts right across that, because it narrows the definition of community infrastructure to which development contributions can be applied. And it limits that to community halls, to play equipment on neighbourhood reserves and to public toilets. So the bill will effectively prevent councils from using development contributions from new subdivisions and development to fund things like aquatic centres, swimming pools, libraries, art galleries, local museums and the like. And there is scant evidence, Mr Speaker, that there was any need for these changes, and the three regulatory impact statements acknowledge that these changes to development contributions are unlikely to significantly improve housing affordability, which is the excuse that the government keeps giving. And indeed, there was a development contributions working group which produced quite a thick report, and it noted that development contributions make up only a very small portion of the total cost of new housing. And there was a discussion paper that the Department of Internal Affairs did, and it highlighted that development contributions make up 4% of the total costs of a new 145 square metre house and land package in Auckland, and similarly in other areas such as Tauranga. So the Development Contributions Working Group said that these changes in this bill will do very little to reduce the development contributions charges. They're likely to reduce them by between a few $100s per dwelling or lot to a few thousand. Will those be passed on to the consumer? It's quite unlikely. They're more likely to be built into increasing the margins of property developers and building companies. Yet what the provisions in this bill around development contributions will do, that narrowing of the definition of community infrastructure, will mean that councils are likely to shy away from growth-related expenditure to provide these facilities in greenfield areas, because they won't be able to recover so much revenue from the contributions. And it means that the Minister, with his special housing areas and housing accord bill, has been zoning large areas for new subdivision, that these areas will potentially become ghettos if councils don't fund the facilities which give these greenfield subdivisions a heart. Because, Mr Speaker, the Green Party wants a society where children thrive. That means free doctor's visits for all children to age 18. It means extending 20 hours free childcare to early childhood education to the under-2s. But it also means that children can grow up in communities where they can walk or cycle to their local library, where they can play indoor basketball in a local gym, where they can swim in rivers that aren't polluted.
Order. Courtesy, please, colleagues.
So, Mr Speaker, these changes around development contributions mean that there's much less likelihood that councils will be able to afford to fund such facilities. And we've got the national government on the one hand railing against councils and their increases in rates, and yet they are depriving councils of a significant source of revenue as an alternative to rates to fund such facilities. The submissions showed that these changes in the bill are going to have severe impacts on councils. Auckland City Council estimated that their funding for community infrastructure from development contributions was in the order of $394 million. Christchurch City Council, $322 million. So it's a major source of revenue that the government is constraining. So that's one reason the Green Party is opposing the bill. Another one is the changes around local boards, because what the government in the bill is doing is encouraging the replacement of competent councils with local boards with much more circumscribed powers. Local boards, as in Auckland, can't employ staff, they can't levy rates, they can't hold or dispose of property, and they can't make bylaws. So this is all part of the national government's plan to centralise power in large unitary councils. So the bill allows the Local Government Commission to establish local boards in any reorganisation, not just in areas of over 400,000 people as the law currently provides. So that means we're going to get fewer councils throughout New Zealand, with the national government's agenda to reorganise and amalgamate in Northland, Hawke's Bay and Wellington, and that reduces local democracy because it shrinks the number of councils. We're also opposing the bill because we think it encourages privatisation and a contracting out of council services by very prescriptive provisions around the review of service delivery. The Minister of Local Government says she's against loopy law and wants people to identify areas of loopy law. Well, this is one area of loopy law because it's telling councils how to do things that they're perfectly capable of doing themselves. The government doesn't have a mandatory review of its services on a 3-yearly or other basis, but it's making it mandatory for councils to do such reviews. That creates ongoing uncertainty amongst staff as to whether they're going to have their jobs or whether the services that they're currently employed to provide are going to be contracted out and they'll lose their jobs. We also oppose the bill because it removes the mandatory requirement for councils to use the special consultative procedure on significant decisions, such as whether they're going to establish council-controlled organisations or sell off regional parks. It provides very little guidance on what decisions are significant, and that means there's a lot of opportunity for minimal consultation. The other area where there's a lost opportunity is around the infrastructure plans. Certainly it's a good idea to encourage strategic thinking about the maintenance of infrastructure, but as the Chief Executive of the Insurance Council said, these provisions around infrastructure plans may be well-intentioned, but they don't focus on natural hazard management, which is a critical issue in terms of the provision and maintenance of infrastructure. So, Mr Speaker, we're opposing this bill because it undermines local democracy, it constrains severely councils' ability to fund our community infrastructure, and it potentially reduces the consultation on quite significant council decisions, and it means that there's going to be much more likelihood of big unitary councils with weak local boards. It's a bad bill.
I call the Honourable Phil Heatley.